Okay. And next thing is, as you know that in AP we got financial options, payable options. In FA we got system option. AR we got system option. Similarly, in your AGIS also we got something called system options. We need to complete the system options. Setup system options. So these are the system options. So click on update. So here you can see intercompany batch numbering. So in AGIS, whenever you talk about transactions, you call something called AGIS batch. So within the batch, there'll be transactions. Within the transactions, there will be something called lines. Okay. So always we say that we use the word AGIS batch. And remember the short name or the actual application name within the system for AGIS is not Advanced Global Intercompany System. The application name, say for AP, the application name is payables. For AR, the application name is receivables. Similarly, for AGIS, the application name is Financial Common Modules. So that is the name of the application. And similarly, short code for AGIS is FUN. That means all the AGIS tables starts with the word fun. FUN, fun underscore TRX batches, fun underscore TRX headers, fun underscore TRX lines, fun underscore intercompany account, something like that. Okay, FUN. So that's the reason why your entire AGS is about fun. Okay, so okay, now back to the system options. So intercompany batch numbering. As far as the intercompany batch number is concerned, whether you want to user to manually enter or whether you want system generated. So just generally go for the system generated. And intercompany transaction currency. You need not enter anything. So because you want to enter the intercompany transactions in both functional as well as foreign currency. If you want to enter only just a functional currency, just enter your functional currency USD, so that when in the data entry screen, it will not even ask you to select any transaction currency. So it will directly default as USD and it will not allow you to change. So if you want to enter intercompany transactions in any currency, functional as well as foreign, leave this particular field as blank. And conversion rate type. So what is the conversion rate type which you want to use if you are entering a foreign currency transaction? So select corporate in this case. Allow recipient to reject transaction. Recipient is a person who is approving or rejecting the intercompany transaction. So in our current example, Rohit is a person who will be approving or rejecting the transaction. If you say allow recipient to as no, then then you're forced, then the approvers are always forced to approve the transaction. They cannot reject. I don't know why Oracle has given this particular functionality. Obviously we got an approval functionality to either approve or reject. So why do you want to go for no? I'm not sure. Generally you should say allow a recipient to reject transaction as yes. Okay. Transfer transactions to general ledger, transfer transactions to payables and receivables. So here we got two modes: batch mode, online mode. So if you go for online mode, as soon as the transaction is approved, automatically the transactions will hit the corresponding general ledger or your AP and AR. But if you select batch, then you need to run a program. So in general, we actually go with the batch mode. So I'll select batch in both the cases, and then I'll show you the programs to run. Okay. If you want to know the programs to run, just select the batch mode. If you do an online mode, then it's not necessary for us to run the program. So and I'll not be able to show you that. Okay. So that is the reason why I selected the options as batch mode. That is in batch or in a group of transactions you want to send in a single go. Generally, we schedule this particular program to run overnight. And what is the intercompany
And
calendar?
I think my understanding is I was asking the question right. I think this is the one. If you select online, that's where the workflow will internally fire those transactions to the open interface tables or to the subledgers. That's my
Okay, maybe.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, intercompany calendar, as you know that like once you create a calendar in GL, similarly in AP and AR also you need to do an opening and closing of the period. Similarly in AGIS also, if you want to use that particular functionality of opening and closing of the period, then associate the company calendar, intercompany calendar. You will create a calendar in GL and come here and click on this search button and search for your internal intercompany calendar. If you leave this calendar as blank, then you will not be able to do what you call period closure in AGIS module. And if the corresponding GL period is open, you will be able to enter a transaction. If the corresponding GL period is closed, you will not be able to enter a transaction. But if I select the same GL calendar here or some other calendar here, I have a flexibility to either open or close GL, my intercompany module, irrespective of my GL module. So definitely we need to go use this particular option. The reason being, in most of the clients, all the subledgers are closed on the last working day of the month, but GL will be open for next couple of days. So take an example of say October. On 31st of October, your all subledgers will be closed, including your AGIS in general, and GL period will be open up to say roughly 10th of November, because you will be doing a lot of kind of other adjustments or something like that in your GL module. So if I do not use this particular option, what will happen is, if I do not enter any calendar here, then the AGS will by default use your GL calendar. So that means I am opening my AGS to the users to enter transactions up to 10th of November. If I do that, then what will happen? I'll enter an AGS transaction, approve it, and when I run the program transfer to AP, especially the subledger related, then it gets stuck in your corresponding subledger tables, because the corresponding October period is already closed in the subledgers on October 31st itself. Okay, so during our implementation, again we made the same mistake. First, we did not assign any calendar, and then it was actually using a GL calendar. Then users raised a concern like, how come you are keeping your AGS open up to 10th of November when the subledgers are already closed? So then we have assigned this particular calendar, and then we are good. Okay. Okay, as we have associated the intercompany calendar. Okay, so that means AGS has got its own calendar. So as the AGS has got its own calendar, the first thing before you start with your data entry is opening up the periods. So go to setup periods. Okay, and other thing what you need to understand is, I'll ask you a question in GL, whether the period closure happens at a ledger level or operating unit level, or at what level in GL the period closure happens, a period closure or period opening.
Ledger level.
Okay, what about in subledgers?
Operating unit.
Operating unit.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Yeah, because we have each subledger for one operating unit.
No. Most of the people think that in subledgers you are doing closure at the operating unit level, but it is wrong. If you go to your subledger, so take an example in this case, Reliance Communications, you got two operating units, Reliance Postpaid and Reliance Prepaid. Okay, both these two fall under Reliance Communications or under Reliance INR ledger. Okay, so in this example, like this is a good example, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 operating units under Reliance INR ledger. Okay, in order to close AP, okay, you need to go to any of these operating units, click on close button. Okay, system will try to check if there are any kind of unposted or exceptions against any of the operating units which fall under this particular ledger. If you go to payable super user, say postpaid INR, so this one. Okay, go to accounting, control payables period. Okay, see at what level you are opening or closing the period, at the ledger level. Okay, so now if I try to say close October period or September period, it is going to check the exceptions against all other operating units. So that means you cannot close a period, or opening is fine, like you cannot close a period unless and until exceptions across all operating units are resolved. So that means subledger, the period closure or period opening is at the ledger level, not at the operating unit level. So in lot of the clients, the practical challenge is, if take an example, there are different people who are managing these different operating units. They need to properly coordinate. If they do not properly coordinate, what Reliance Clothes Manufacturing says that, okay, I ensure that all my what do you call, my exceptions are cleared, all my accounting entries are transferred to Jet, and everything is fine. But if there are some exceptions with this particular operating unit, you need to wait. Okay, you need to wait in the sense like the period closure cannot be done. But in order to close the period, you can go to any of these operating units and go to this particular control payable periods form to open or close the form. So this is actually at the ledger level. It is not only true for AP, it is true even for the AR also. Okay, so that means indirectly, even in the subledgers also, I mean not even indirectly, so you can say that directly even in the subledgers also, the period closure is happening at the ledger level, not at the operating unit level. Most of the users, even users also think that the subledgers, the period closure is happening at the operating unit level, but it is not at the operating unit level, it is at the ledger level. Okay. Okay. Now in AGIS, yeah, Niranjan.
No. Interview question. One check mark.
Yeah. Okay.
Fish already bought.
Okay. From an AGIS perspective, as I said that the period closure, period opening happens at a ledger level, either at GL or the operating unit level. In AGIS, the period closure or period opening happens at something called transaction type level. See here, if I select a period of say October 17 and click on go, you will be able to see the period status at the transaction type level. Say that means for a couple of transaction type, I can open, and for a couple of transaction type, I can leave it unopened. So here example, you can see subledger invoices and intercompany journal. These are the two transaction types which we are using, and I have opened these two particular transaction type. For all of the transaction type, it is not open. If you want to do a period opening in a single go for all the transaction type, just click on this. Okay, and if I click on this, these two are not selected. The reason being these two are already open. Okay, and you can see only the all other transaction type other than these two, whatever is not selected, are in never open status. So when I click on open button, automatically you will be able to, okay, we can do that, open. Okay, now you can see all the transactions are open, all the transaction types. Similarly, for closure, October 17, all the transaction types are open. So if I want to close a particular transaction type, if I want to close everything, select everything. If I want to close particular transaction, say I select this and click on close. The period October 17 was closed for this particular transaction type. And if there are any kind of a pending transaction, okay, there is something called open transactions here. So if under R2 transaction type, if there are any pending transaction types, you will be able to see those open transaction type, and system will not allow that particular period to be closed. So you need to click on that hyperlink. It will take you to the next screen, and in the next screen, it will ask you to sweep them to the next open period. Okay, we can get into that like once we complete our data entry. Okay, so the first thing is you have to open the period before you start doing a data entry under those transaction types.
Arvind, just one quick question. So the control period, the controlling of the periods in subledgers, right? So is it different from R12 to 11i?
It's the same. You can check even in 11i also the same.
Somehow I was checking in 11i instance, so I don't see the ledger option in here.
But okay, in 11i you don't have ledger option, but you can check in your testing environment. Okay, take any ledger which has got two operating units. Okay, in one operating unit, ensure that everything is your accounted, transferred to jail, everything is fine. Okay, okay, in the first operating unit. In the second operating unit, ensure that there are some exception, that is some create an invoices, validate that but do not account them. Okay, and now try to go to the first operating unit, try to close the period. It will not allow the period to be closed because there are exceptions which are available in the other operating unit, and unless and until you clear those exceptions, you will not be able to close this particular period. I think if I remember it correctly, when you close that, it will clearly throw a message saying that ensure that exceptions are closed under all operating unit, something like that. We clearly faced the same issue during our when we were taking care of period closure in my one of my previous client who were actually using 11i.
Okay.
Okay, so coming back to AGI, so that's where you actually do a period opening or a period closure. Okay, and next thing is there are a couple of other, I think there are one or two minor steps which you need to do in AR before we proceed with what do you call, doing a data entry in AGS, which will generate your AR invoices. In AR, there is a transaction source called global intercompany. So all the AR invoices, all the AGIS transactions, whatever gets created, whether it goes to your GL or your subledgers, they get created with the source of transaction source of global intercompany. In GL, they will get created if it is going directly from AGIS to GL, it will have a GL source of global intercompany. If it is going from AGIS to subledgers, they will have a source of transaction source or your invoice source. If it is a AP, you call it as an invoice source. If it is an AR, you call it as a transaction source. They will have a source of global intercompany. So that's the source name. So go to AR before we start using that. Accounts receivable, telecom USD. Setup, transaction source. So this is the seeded source provided by Oracle, global intercompany. What we need to do is, for transaction source global intercompany, navigate to this particular responsibility. It's not got an extraction. Set up transaction source query for global intercompany. Uncheck allow sales credit under auto invoice options. Under auto invoice option, there is a allow sales credit is automatically checked because this is a seeded source. You need to uncheck this particular sales credit. The reason being, we are not using a sales credit functionality. I mean, we cannot use the sales credit functionality in generally AGIS. I am not sure like why that is by default it is checked, but even in our implementation project, we have ensured that this is checked. Generally unchecked. Generally, allow sales credit functionality is used if the transactions are created in AR from the order management. So if you do not uncheck this particular checkbox, if you do not uncheck this particular checkbox, then when you are pushing the data from your AGIS to AR, then the data gets stuck in the interface table. Okay, and for there are two different transactions. This is the transaction source, and if you remember, when you create your AR invoice, one is source and other is transaction type. These two are important aspects apart from the customer. Okay, source is the global intercompany for our AGIS invoices, and as far as the type is concerned, again there are two seeded types: intercompany credit memo. So if you are creating a credit memos from your AR, then it will be intercompany credit memo. If you are creating a normal invoices, it will be intercompany. Okay, ensure that for these two transaction types, that is your intercompany and intercompany CM, ensure that this accounting and this what do you call receivable revenue account code combinations are entered. Okay, if you do not enter, I know like when you create your AJS, you actually populate the corresponding your revenue account or intercompany receivable account will be generated by the system. But even though we are populating there, from a system perspective, if these some default values are not available, again when you run your program in your AJS, it is getting stuck in the interface table, saying that these things are missing. Again, this is one of the practical challenges which we faced in our current client. Even we assume that why should I mention your receivable revenue or other tax account here? Because we are already passing those values from your AGIS itself. But from a system setup perspective, just pass some dummy receivable revenue account and then enter your own intercompany receivable revenue account in your AGIS. System will try to bring only those values. It will not pull from this particular AG transaction type. Okay, but that is a setup which you need to do. Okay, and one more point is these are the setups, and I'll again give you an example of the customization whatever we have done for one small requirement. Okay, so in AGS by default the transaction batch numbering is 10,000 or the transaction numbering is 10,005. Okay, so basically we'll talk about this automatic transaction numbering 10,005. So that means when that is the current sequence now which is running now. So whenever I create my AGS batch and run the corresponding program from AGS, it gets pushed to your AR and then to AP. Whatever the transaction number which is created in AR, the same transaction number system uses to create invoice in AP. Okay, and as far as so that means the transaction number for the transaction number AR is the base. So whatever the transaction number which you use in AR, system will use the same thing in AP. And our requirement is We do not want this particular transaction number to start with, this is the system default value, 10, I think it starts from 10,000. We do not want that particular system to use the 10,000 series. We just want to use some other series, and we want to use different series for different under different operating units. So what we did is, it's not exactly kind of a customization. This particular number is actually coming from something called sequence. Okay, for each transaction, so there is a sequence in the background, and the default sequence is starting with 10,000. So what we have done is, as soon as the new operating unit is set up, we have dropped the sequence and created a new sequence to start with our own number. So in this case, the command whatever we have used is drop array underscore transaction source underscore s. There is some org ID there, and then create a sequence with the same sequence to start with some other number. So that system will, once you execute that particular command and come to this particular screen, then you will be able to see the updated number whatever you have used in this particular sequence. If you, in the sequence, if you have used that your transaction should start with say 100,000. So once you come to this particular screen, you will be able to see the last number as 99,9999. That means my first transaction will start from 100,000. Okay.
Arvind, that is at the transaction source level?
Yes. Not at a transaction type level, it is a transaction source level. And I
So
need
when
not
you define
yeah.
when you define any new source,
Mm-hmm.
but the sequence is defined for that particular source, or that sequence can be used across the source?
Okay, if you are creating a new transaction source, okay, it's a new transaction source, then you can enter your own sequence here. Okay, but this is a seeded source. Okay, the first thing is, it being a seeded source, this is disabled, I cannot change this. So that is the reason why we have gone for the backend approach. Okay, and that particular sequence is per source per operating unit. RA TRX, something like RA TRX source underscore org ID. Say if the org ID of this particular Reliance Telecom is say 1234, the exact sequence name is RA underscore TRX underscore source underscore source ID for this global intercompany is 22. Okay, underscore org ID, which is say 123 underscore yes. So that is the exact sequence. So sequence contains in the background also, the sequence is maintained at the source as well as the operating unit level.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,